My name is Marilyn, and at 35 years old, I never thought my own family would try to take what I worked so hard for. That night at dinner, when my sister-in-law Vanessa smirked and announced they were moving into my duplex, demanding renovations to the master bedroom, I felt my stomach drop. Everyone nodded like it was already decided, like my years of sacrifice meant nothing. I sat frozen, the fork halfway to my mouth, as my entire world tilted sideways. Before I continue my story, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from, and subscribe if you want to hear more stories about standing up for yourself. Trust me, you will want to see how this one ends. I have always been the responsible one. After college, while my friends were hopping between jobs trying to find their passion, I secured a position as a junior accountant at a tech firm in the city. 12 years later, I am now a senior accounting manager with a comfortable salary. Comfortable, but not extravagant. In this economy, even a good salary only goes so far. The duplex was my dream for nearly a decade. I remember the exact moment I decided I wanted to own property instead of throwing money away on rent. It was after my landlord raised my rent for the third time in 4 years. I sat at my tiny kitchen table, calculator in hand, realizing I had paid him enough to buy half a house, yet owned nothing. That night, I made a plan. I would save every extra penny for a down payment. No more weekend brunches with friends. No more new clothes unless absolutely necessary. No more vacations. Instead, I picked up weekend bookkeeping for small businesses. For 5 long years, I worked 7 days a week. When friends invited me out, I calculated how many hours of work that dinner would cost me, and usually declined. While others my age posted photos from tropical beaches, I stayed home building my savings account. The day I qualified for my mortgage was one of the proudest moments of my life. I had saved $60,000 for the down payment entirely on my own. No help from family, no inheritance, just pure determination and sacrifice. I still remember standing in front of the duplex, with the keys in my hand, tears streaming down my face. It was mine. All mine. The duplex itself is nothing fancy, but it is in a quiet neighborhood just 15 minutes from downtown. 2 units each, with 2 bedrooms separated by a shared wall. The plan was perfect. Live in one unit, rent out the other, and use that rental income to help pay the mortgage. Financial advisors call it house hacking. I call it smart planning. The place needed work when I bought it. The previous owners had been an elderly couple who had not updated anything since the 90s. I spent 6 exhausting months fixing it up. Every evening after work and every weekend, I was painting walls, replacing flooring, and updating fixtures. I learned to use power tools from YouTube videos. My hands were constantly covered in paint, my knees bruised from kneeling on hard floors. But with each improvement, my pride grew. This place was becoming mine in every sense. My family never quite understood my obsession with financial independence. My parents, Thomas and Eleanor, are traditional in many ways. They believe in family support, which in practice means the whole family pitching in to help my younger brother Jackson. At 32 years old, Jackson has never held a job for more than 18 months. His resume reads like a tour through every industry: retail, food service, office work, sales, construction. Each new job was going to be the one that stuck until it inevitably did not. Jackson married Vanessa when they were both 25. Vanessa has never worked full-time since they had twins Noah and Emma 5 years ago. The twins are adorable, but wild, clearly used to getting their way. Vanessa always has a reason why she cannot work. The twins need her at home, childcare is too expensive, her old boss was terrible, the hours did not work for their family. Meanwhile, Jackson's inconsistent employment means they are always just one paycheck away from financial disaster. My parents have bailed them out countless times. When Jackson and Vanessa could not make rent, my parents paid it. When their car needed repairs, my father handled it. When the twins needed expensive preschool tuition, my mother wrote the check. I watched this pattern with growing concern, noticing how Jackson never seemed to learn financial responsibility because there were never any consequences for his poor decisions. Despite all this, I love my family. Jackson can be charming and funny when he wants to be. My parents mean well, even if their helping often becomes enabling. And the twins bring joy to family gatherings with their energy and laughter. Family is complicated, but they are still mine. When Jackson called me 3 weeks ago to say he had his hours cut at the warehouse where he was working, I sympathized. I even offered to help him update his resume and practiced interview questions with him. What I did not offer was my home. That never even crossed my mind as a possibility. Their current situation was indeed difficult. They were renting a 3-bedroom house at an inflated rate. Their lease was ending in 2 months, and with Jackson's reduced income, they were struggling to qualify for a new rental. Vanessa had been complaining about their landlord on social media, saying the house had problems that never got fixed. Part of me wondered if they were just being difficult tenants given their track record. The last time I had visited their rental, I noticed toys scattered everywhere, stains on the carpet, and a hole in one wall that Jackson swore was there when they moved in. I had my doubts. They did not seem to take care of the place the way people do when they respect property. Perhaps that was why I felt such immediate alarm at the idea of them moving into my carefully renovated duplex. The week before the fateful dinner, my mother had called, just to chat, or so I thought. Looking back, she had casually asked how my tenant in the other unit was doing. I told her truthfully that Kevin, a quiet software engineer who had been renting for the past year, had given notice. He was relocating for a job in another state. His lease would be up at the end of the month, and I was already preparing to find a new tenant. Mom had made an odd comment. That is convenient timing. I did not think much of it then. I should have. Our monthly family dinners are a tradition that goes back to when Jackson and I were kids. Even though we are all adults now, my mother insists we gather at her house once a month for a home-cooked meal and family time. Usually, I look forward to these dinners. Mom is an excellent cook, and despite our differences, I enjoy seeing everyone. That particular Sunday in April started like any other family dinner. I arrived at 6, bearing a bottle of wine and a store-bought cheesecake for dessert. Mom hugged me at the door, the familiar scent of her perfume mixed with whatever was cooking in the oven. Dad was in his usual spot in the living room watching a basketball game. He raised his beer in greeting without looking away from the screen. Jackson, Vanessa, and the twins arrived 15 minutes late as usual. The twins immediately ran to the playroom my parents had set up for them, while Jackson collapsed on the couch next to Dad as if the drive had exhausted him. Vanessa headed to the kitchen to help Mom, though help might be a generous term. Mostly, she stands around commenting on how she would do things differently. Dinner itself was Mom's special roast chicken with all the trimmings. The conversation flowed normally at first. Mom asked about my work, and I shared a little about a big project I had just completed. Dad talked about the retirement community golf tournament he had won. Jackson mentioned he was thinking about getting into real estate, a new career aspiration I had not heard before. It was during dessert when everything changed. I was just taking my first bite of cheesecake when Vanessa cleared her throat dramatically. "So, Marilyn," she said, her voice carrying that faux sweet tone that always sets my teeth on edge. "When we move into your duplex, I want the master bedroom renovated. It is only fair since we will be living there long term." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. The room seemed to tilt sideways as I processed her words. Everyone at the table was looking at me expectantly like this was a perfectly normal request. My mother was nodding encouragingly. My father had a satisfied smile. Jackson was the only one who looked slightly uncomfortable, studying his dessert with sudden intensity. I am sorry, what I finally managed, setting my fork down carefully. What do you mean when you move into my duplex? Vanessa rolled her eyes slightly, as if I was being deliberately obtuse. You know, since Kevin is moving out, the timing is perfect. We need a place you have an empty unit. But that unit is a rental property. I need the income to help pay the mortgage, I said, feeling like I was explaining something painfully obvious. My mother reached over and patted my hand. Sweetie, family is more important than money. Jackson and Vanessa are having a hard time right now. Plus, Vanessa continued as if I had not spoken, we need more than just the rental unit. That only has 2 bedrooms, and with the twins growing, they really need separate rooms. So we thought we could take over your unit since it is bigger, and you could move into the smaller one, or find an apartment somewhere else. My jaw literally dropped. They were not just expecting to move into the rental unit for free, they wanted my unit as well. The home I had poured my heart, soul, and savings into creating. That is completely out of the question, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. That is my home. Do not be selfish, Marilyn, my father spoke up, his tone holding that authoritative edge I remembered from childhood. Your brother has a family to support. You are just one person. You do not need all that space. I earned that space. I countered, feeling heat rise in my cheeks. I worked for it. I saved for years for the down payment. I renovated it myself. I pay the mortgage. And we would help with the mortgage, Jackson finally spoke, though he still would not meet my eye. Eventually, once we get back on our feet. How long would that take? I asked. And what exactly does help mean? Would you pay market rate, rent, sign a lease, be responsible for damages? An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. My mother broke it with a nervous laugh. Marilyn, these are family business details we can work out later. The important thing is helping Jackson and Vanessa in their time of need. Plus, Vanessa added, pulling out her phone. I already have ideas for renovations. The kitchen needs updating. Stainless steel appliances would be nice. And the twins need a play area, so we were thinking of knocking down the wall between the second bedroom and the office to create one large space. Knock down walls, I echoed in disbelief. In my house, the house that I own. Our house, my father corrected. This is a family matter, and family property is shared. I felt like I had stepped into some alternate reality, where all logic had been abandoned. It is not family property. It is my property. My name is on the deed and the mortgage. Do not be so literal, my mother sighed. We are just talking about helping out your brother for a few years. A few years. The room seemed to be spinning slightly. How many is a few? Vanessa shrugged. 3 to 5, maybe longer, until we can save enough for our own place. Based on their financial history, that could mean forever. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. What about my tenant situation? I need that rental income. Without it, I would struggle to pay the mortgage. You make good money at your job, my father dismissed my concern with a wave of his hand. You will figure it out. Maybe get a roommate for the smaller unit. Or rent an apartment somewhere else, Vanessa suggested again. There are some cute studios near your office. They had it all planned out. Without consulting me, they had decided to take over my home, displace me, eliminate my rental income, and saddle me with renovation costs. All while acting like they were doing me a favor by letting me be part of this generous family arrangement. This is not happening, I said, standing up from the table. I am not giving up my home or my rental income. I am sorry about your situation, but you will need to find another solution. My mother's face crumpled. Marilyn, how can you be so cold? This is your brother. Yes, and I love him, but this is completely unreasonable, I said, gathering my purse. I need to go. I have work to prepare for tomorrow. As I headed for the door, I heard Vanessa's stage whisper to my mother, I told you she would be difficult. She has always been selfish. I drove home in a fog of disbelief and hurt. Before I even reached my driveway, my phone pinged with a text from Vanessa. She had sent a 2-page list of all the renovations she expected, along with paint color preferences and furniture requirements. The audacity was breathtaking. Alone in my duplex, I looked around at the home I had created, the hardwood floors I had sanded and refinished by hand, the kitchen backsplash I had installed tile by tile over a long weekend, the custom shelving I had designed for my books, all of it created through my hard work, my sacrifice, my determination, and my family thought they could just take it as if I owed it to them. That night, I barely slept, my mind racing with anger, hurt, and disbelief. By morning, I knew this would not be the end of it. The battle for my duplex had only just begun. The call from my mother came at 7:30 the next morning, just as I was pouring my first cup of coffee. Marilyn, she began, without even saying hello, we need to talk about how you behaved last night. Leaving dinner early was very rude. I took a deep breath. Mom, I left because I was ambushed with an unreasonable demand to give up my home. I think my reaction was perfectly appropriate under the circumstances. Nobody is asking you to give up anything, she said, her voice taking on that martyred tone I knew so well. We are asking you to share with your family in their time of need. That is what families do. They help each other. There is helping, and then there is taking advantage, I pointed out. Jackson and Vanessa want to move into my home, pay no rent, renovate it to their specifications at my expense, and displace me from the space I have created for myself. How is that reasonable? You have always been so independent, she sighed, as if this were a character flaw. Ever since you were little, never wanting to share your toys, always keeping things for yourself. Is this really who you want to be, Marilyn? Someone who puts possessions above family? The guilt trip was so transparent, it almost made me laugh. Almost. This is not about a toy, Mom. This is my home and a significant financial investment. Would you give up your house if someone demanded it? That is different, she dismissed. We are older. We have earned our place. You are still young. You can adjust. Besides, you are single, with no children. Jackson has the twins to think about. There it was. The implication that my life, my needs, my space were less important because I had not followed the traditional path of marriage and children. It stung, but it also strengthened my resolve. My answer is no, I said firmly. I am happy to help Jackson in other ways. I can help him job hunt or look for affordable housing options, but I will not give up my home or my rental income. She hung up with a disappointed, "We will see about that," which felt ominously like a threat. Later that day, my father texted asking to meet for coffee near my office. Against my better judgment, I agreed. He was waiting when I arrived at the cafe, 2 coffees already on the table. "Princess," he said, using my childhood nickname that he only pulled out when he wanted something. "Let us talk reasonably about this situation." I sat down, determined to stay calm and firm. I am all for reasonable conversation, Dad. Your mother and I have been thinking, he began, stirring his coffee unnecessarily. This duplex situation could be a win-win for everyone. Jackson and Vanessa get a stable home for the twins. You get to help your brother. And eventually, once they are back on their feet, they could even buy the duplex from you. I nearly choked on my coffee. Buy it from me with what money they cannot even afford rent. He waved away this inconvenient detail. Down the road, of course. The point is, this is what family does. When I was starting out, your grandfather helped me with our first house. That is the tradition in our family. Helping is one thing, I agreed. Completely taking over someone's property and expecting them to move out is another. Would Grandpa have expected you to give up your house to Uncle Robert? That was different, he frowned. And frankly, Marilyn, I am disappointed in you. A young single woman like you should be more giving. Look at your cousin Patricia. When her sister needed a place to stay after her divorce, Patricia took her in without question. For a few weeks, I pointed out. Not 3 to 5 years. And she did not demand Patricia move out or renovate her apartment. My father's expression hardened. I thought I raised you better than this, to be so materialistic, so unwilling to sacrifice for family. I have sacrificed plenty, I said quietly. I worked 7 days a week for 5 years to afford that duplex. I did all the renovations myself to save money. I carefully budget to make sure the mortgage gets paid on time. That is not being materialistic. That is being responsible. Well, he said, standing up and tossing a few dollars on the table for the coffee. I hope you reconsider what kind of person you want to be. Your mother and I always thought you had a good heart. As he walked away, the implication hung in the air by refusing to give up my home. I was proving I had a bad heart. The manipulation was so blatant, it made me angry rather than guilty. That evening, Jackson called. His voice was hesitant, lacking the entitlement that had characterized Vanessa's demands. "Hey, sis," he began awkwardly. "About last night. I want you to know that the way it came out was not how I wanted to approach this." "You mean you did not want to ambush me at a family dinner with demands to take over my home?" I asked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. He sighed. "Yeah, that was Vanessa's idea. She thought you would be more likely to agree with everyone there." "So you were trying to use social pressure to manipulate me," I translated. "That does not make it better, Jackson." "Look, we are in a tough spot," he admitted. "The rent on our current place is killing us, and with my hours cut back, we are struggling. The duplex seemed like a perfect solution." "Perfect for you," I pointed out. "Not for me. I need the rental income from that unit to help pay my mortgage. And I certainly have no intention of giving up my own unit or paying for extensive renovations." We could help with the mortgage, he offered weakly. "Once things turn around for us." "And when would that be?" "Based on past experience, never. You have been waiting for things to turn around for years, Jackson. Meanwhile, I would be struggling to pay a mortgage on a property I am not even living in." There was a long pause. "I get it, you are angry," he finally said. "But we are family. I would do the same for you if situations were reversed." I almost laughed at that. Would you give up your home, lose rental income, pay for renovations, and displace your family all because I demanded it?" "Well, when you put it that way." "That is exactly what you are asking of me," I said firmly. "And the answer is no. I can help you look for affordable housing. I can help you update your resume, but I cannot and will not give you my home." After we hung up, I received an email from Vanessa. My jaw dropped as I scrolled through a 2-page document outlining all the changes she wanted to make to my duplex. New kitchen cabinets, stainless steel appliances, removing a wall to create a play area, converting my home office into a craft room for her, repainting every room to suit her taste, and at the bottom a note that we could split the renovation costs 50-50. The audacity was stunning. She was asking me to pay thousands of dollars to renovate my own property to her specifications, only to then give it to her rent-free. It was so far beyond reasonable. that it bordered on delusional. Over the next few days, the pressure intensified. Aunts, uncles, and cousins I rarely spoke to began calling and texting, all with the same message: family helps family. You should let Jackson and Vanessa move in. It became clear that my parents had been rallying the troops, presenting a one-sided version of the story that cast me as the villain. Vanessa posted a vague update on social media about being disappointed by selfish relatives when you are in need, which prompted a flood of sympathetic comments. I felt isolated and attacked from all sides. Even a few family friends reached out to encourage me to reconsider. The coordinated guilt campaign was both impressive and deeply hurtful. For the first time, I began to doubt myself. Was I being unreasonable, selfish? Should I just give in to keep the peace? That night, I sat alone in my living room, looking around at the home I had created through years of hard work and sacrifice. The thought of giving it up made my chest physically ache. Yet the thought of being labeled the family villain was almost equally painful. I needed perspective from someone outside the situation, someone who would not be swayed by family loyalty or emotional manipulation. The next day, I called my best friend Sarah and asked if we could meet for lunch. Sarah and I have been friends since college, and she has always been my voice of reason during difficult times. We met at our favorite Thai restaurant, and I poured out the whole story over pad Thai and spring rolls. Sarah listened without interrupting her expression, growing increasingly outraged. "Let me get this straight," she said when I finished. "Your brother and his wife want you to give up your home, lose your rental income, move out, and pay for renovations, so they can live there for free for the foreseeable future. And your family thinks you are the unreasonable one for saying no." Put so bluntly, it sounded even more absurd than it had in my head. "Yes, that pretty much sums it up." Sarah shook her head in disbelief. "Marilyn, this is absolutely insane. You worked your ass off for that duplex. No one has the right to demand you give it up, family or not." "But my parents keep saying, 'Family helps family,'" I said, voicing the doubt that had been gnawing at me. "Am I being selfish?" "Helping family does not mean letting them take advantage of you," Sarah said firmly. "There is a difference between giving someone a hand up and letting them pull you down. This situation would be financially devastating for you." That is what I keep trying to tell them, I sighed. But they act like the financial aspect is trivial compared to family obligation. "Because it is not their finances at risk," Sarah pointed out. "Look, my sister went through something similar last year. Her husband's brother wanted to move into their rental property without paying market rate. She almost gave in, but then she talked to a financial advisor who laid out exactly what it would cost her over time. The numbers were so shocking that she found her backbone real quick." A financial advisor? That was a good idea. Someone who could give me objective information about the financial impact without the emotional family baggage. The next day, I met with David, a financial advisor recommended by a colleague. I brought all my paperwork, mortgage statements, rental income records, property tax information, and utility bills. David reviewed everything carefully, then looked up with concern. "Miss Parker, based on these numbers, letting your brother's family move into your rental unit without paying rent would cost you approximately $20,000 per year in lost income," he said. "That is income you currently use to help pay your mortgage. And if I moved out of my unit as well," I asked, wanting to understand the full picture. He did some quick calculations. "You would be looking at a loss of about $40,000 annually. Once you factor in additional rent you would need to pay elsewhere, plus the loss of both units' income." "And what about the renovation costs they are requesting?" David grimaced. Based on current construction prices, the changes they are proposing would run between $25,000 and $30,000. If they want high-end finishes, possibly more. I felt sick. So over the 3 to 5 years they are proposing to stay, I could be looking at a financial loss of between $145,000 and $225,000, David confirmed. Plus, potential property damage, decreased property value if renovations are poorly done, and the complication of removing them if they refuse to leave after the agreed-upon time. The numbers were staggering. This was not a small favor. This was a massive financial sacrifice that could potentially ruin me. There is also the legal aspect to consider, David added. Without a formal lease agreement, you would have very little protection if problems arose. And in many states, after a certain period of occupancy, removing even non-paying tenants can become legally complex. That was another angle I had not fully considered. I decided to consult with a real estate attorney as well to understand my legal risks. Jennifer, the attorney I met with later that week, confirmed my fears. Family arrangements without clear written agreements are a legal nightmare, she told me. I have seen countless cases where family members refuse to leave, stop contributing as promised, or cause significant property damage with no recourse for the owner. What would you recommend in my situation? I asked. Honestly, do not do it, she said bluntly. But if you feel compelled for family reasons at minimum, you should have a formal lease agreement with market rate rent specified a security deposit, clear terms about who pays for what, and an unambiguous end date. Anything less is asking for trouble. And what if they refuse to sign such an agreement? Jennifer gave me a knowing look. Then they are not planning to honor any verbal agreements either. Armed with this professional advice, I spent the next few days researching online. I found countless forum threads from people who had allowed family members to move into their properties only to face disaster. Common themes emerged: promised payments that never materialized, property damage, refusal to leave when asked, and permanently damaged family relationships. I also reflected deeply on the patterns in my own family. This was not the first time Jackson had expected to be bailed out, nor the first time my parents had enabled his poor choices. From paying his college tuition, which he never completed, to covering the down payment on his first car, to helping with rent when he quit jobs without having new ones lined up, the pattern was clear. Jackson had never had to face the consequences of his choices, because someone always rescued him. And where had that gotten him? At 32, he was still financially unstable, still making poor decisions, still expecting others to fix his problems. Was I really helping him by continuing this pattern? Or was I just ensuring he would never learn to stand on his own? I made a list of all the times I had helped Jackson financially over the years. The loan for his wedding that was never repaid, the 3 months of car payments I covered when he was between jobs, the twins' preschool tuition I helped with last year. None of this help had led to greater stability or responsibility on his part. By the end of the week, I had clarity. This was not about being selfish or uncaring. This was about setting healthy boundaries both for my own well-being and ultimately for Jackson's. Sometimes the most caring thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling behavior that keeps them stuck. I began preparing for the inevitable confrontation. I wrote out key points I wanted to make. I researched affordable housing options in our area that might work for Jackson's family. I practiced what I would say, preparing for the emotional manipulation I knew would come. Most importantly, I strengthened my resolve. This was my home, earned through my hard work and sacrifice. I had the right to protect it, even from family. That was not selfishness. That was self-respect. A week after the initial dinner, my mother called to summon me to another family meeting. Her tone made it clear this was not optional. "We need to resolve this situation as a family," she said, in a voice that suggested the resolution would involve me giving in. I arrived at my parents' house Sunday afternoon to find not just my immediate family, but also 2 aunts and an uncle. The dining room table was set formally with the good china that only came out for holidays. This was clearly staged to be an official family tribunal with me as the defendant. Jackson and Vanessa arrived last, carrying a thick folder of papers. Vanessa placed it ceremoniously on the table as they sat down. I caught a glimpse of color printouts inside what looked like renovation plans and decorating ideas. Once everyone was seated, my father cleared his throat. "We are here to discuss the duplex situation and come to a family agreement," he announced, as if presiding over a board meeting. My mother reached for my hand across the table. "Marilyn, we know you were surprised at dinner last week. We should have approached this differently, but now we have a chance to work things out properly." Before I could respond, Vanessa opened her folder and began distributing printouts to everyone. "These are our plans for the space," she explained, her tone businesslike. "We have really thought about how to make the duplex work for our family." I looked down at the papers in shock. They were professional quality floor plans showing extensive renovations to my duplex. Walls moved, rooms repurposed, even an extension added to the back patio. "We have gotten quotes from contractors," Jackson added, his confidence growing as he warmed to their presentation. "The total renovations would run about $30,000. We thought we could split that cost with you, Marilyn." "Split the cost," I echoed in disbelief. "For renovations I do not want to. A property you want to live in, rent-free." "Not forever," Vanessa interjected. "Just until we get back on our feet. 3 years, 5 tops." My mother nodded encouragingly. "And we have worked out where you could live, dear. There is a cute studio apartment available in that complex near your office. It is only $1,200 a month, which is very reasonable these days." I felt like I had stepped into an alternate reality. They had planned all of this down to where I would live without any input from me. My father pulled out a document from his own folder. "We have drawn up a family agreement," he said, sliding it across to me, "just to make everything clear and official." I glanced at the paper. It was titled Family Housing Arrangement and outlined how I would allow Jackson and Vanessa to occupy my entire duplex rent-free for a period not less than 3 years. I would contribute to renovation costs and relocate to housing of comparable value. The only mention of any payment from them was a vague reference to potential future rent contributions as financial situation improves. "This is not a legal document," I said, pushing it back across the table. "And even if it were, I would not sign it." "This is a family matter, not a legal one," my father said dismissively. "The point is to have our arrangement in writing so there are no misunderstandings." "The misunderstanding seems to be that I have agreed to any of this," I replied. "I have not. This is my property, purchased with my money, maintained with my labor. I am not giving it up." "Do not be so dramatic," Vanessa rolled her eyes. "No one is asking you to give it up, just to share it for a while." "Share implies equal contribution," I pointed out. "What exactly are you contributing to this arrangement?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Finally, Jackson spoke up. "We are family, Marilyn. That should be enough." Before I could respond, Vanessa dropped another bombshell. "Besides, we have already given notice at our current place. The landlord has already found new tenants. We need to be out by the 30th. I stared at her in disbelief. "You gave notice before confirming you had somewhere to go." She shrugged. "We knew you would come around once you had time to think about it. Family does not let family become homeless." We need your keys, Jackson added his tone, suggesting this was a reasonable request, so we can start moving some boxes in this weekend. That was the moment something snapped inside me. The cumulative weight of their entitlement manipulation and complete disregard for my boundaries became too much to bear silently. I stood up my chair, scraping loudly against the floor. No, I said, my voice steady, despite my racing heart. Not only am I not giving you my keys, I am not giving you my home. Not the rental unit, not my unit, not any part of it. Marilyn, my mother gasped. Sit down. We are trying to have a civilized discussion. There is nothing civilized about this, I replied. You all have planned out how to take over my property, displace me from my home, saddle me with renovation costs, and eliminate my rental income. You have made these plans without my consent, as if my ownership means nothing, as if my years of hard work to buy and improve that property count for nothing. We are your family, my father said sternly. That property should benefit all of us. Did all of you contribute to the down payment? I asked, looking around the table. Did any of you spend your weekends for 6 months painting, laying tile, refinishing floors? Do any of your names appear on the mortgage that I pay each month? No one answered. I love you all, I continued, gathering my purse. But I will not be manipulated or bullied into giving up something I worked so hard to achieve. Jackson and Vanessa need to find their own housing solution, one they can afford based on their own income. If you walk out that door, my father warned, you are choosing property over family. I paused at the doorway and turned back. No, Dad. I am choosing self-respect over enabling. There is a difference. As I walked to my car, I heard the commotion break out behind me. My mother began to cry. Vanessa started shouting about my selfishness. My father called my name in that commanding tone that had always made me obey as a child. But I kept walking. With each step, I felt a strange mix of heartbreak and liberation. The pain of disappointing my family was real. But so was the empowerment of finally standing up for myself. I drove home to my duplex, tears streaming down my face, but with a newfound determination strengthening my spine. This battle was far from over, but I had taken the first crucial step. I had said no. The days following the family meeting were both difficult and clarifying. I took 3 days of personal leave from work to process what had happened and plan my next steps. My phone buzzed constantly, with texts and calls from family members ranging from guilt-tripping to outright anger. I muted most of the notifications, needing space to think clearly. On my first day off, I met again with Jennifer, the real estate attorney. After hearing the full update, she looked concerned. Their expectation that they can move in without your consent is troubling, she said. I would recommend changing the locks on your duplex immediately, just as a precaution. Do you really think they would try to move in without my permission? I asked, shocked at the suggestion. Jennifer's expression was grave. In my 20 years of practice, I have seen family disputes over property turn ugly more times than I can count. Better safe than sorry. That afternoon, I had the locks changed on both units of the duplex. The locksmith gave me a curious look when I explained I needed it done immediately, but he did not ask questions. With the property physically secured, I turned my attention to the rental unit. Kevin would be moving out in 2 weeks, and I needed a new tenant quickly. If the unit was occupied by a paying tenant with a legal lease, it would eliminate at least part of Jackson and Vanessa's plan. I spent the next day updating the rental listing with new photos and a competitive but fair rental price. By evening, I had scheduled 5 showings for the following day. The rental market was tight, and a well-maintained 2-bedroom duplex in a good neighborhood attracted plenty of interest. Among the potential tenants who viewed the property Michael and Jessica Franklin stood out immediately. Both were medical residents at the university hospital looking for a quiet place close to work. They were impressed by the renovations I had done and said they appreciated a landlord who took pride in their property. "We have seen so many neglected rentals," Jessica confided. "It is refreshing to find one that is so well cared for." Their application was impeccable, excellent credit scores, stable income, despite being early in their careers, and glowing references from previous landlords. By the end of the day, I had approved their application and prepared a lease agreement. Jennifer reviewed it to ensure everything was legally sound. 2 days later, the Franklins signed a 2-year lease with a substantial security deposit. They would move in immediately after Kevin moved out with no gap in occupancy or rental income. The lease included clear terms about guests subletting not allowed, and property alterations required written permission. 12. With the rental unit secured, I began researching affordable housing options for Jackson and Vanessa. If I was going to stand firm against their plan to take over my duplex, I wanted to offer constructive alternatives. I compiled information on apartment complexes with 3-bedroom units in their price range housing assistance programs they might qualify for, and even job opportunities that might help improve their financial situation. By the end of my 3-day leave, I felt prepared to face my family again. I organized all my documentation, including financial projections, the new lease agreement with the tenant's personal information redacted, and the housing alternatives I had researched. I wanted this conversation to be factual and solution-oriented, not emotional. I texted my parents Jackson and Vanessa, inviting them to meet at my duplex the following Saturday morning. I would like to discuss the housing situation calmly and propose some alternatives, I wrote. I deliberately chose my home as the meeting place to reinforce my ownership and authority over the property. To my surprise, they all agreed to come. Perhaps they thought I had reconsidered and was going to give in. Or maybe they were just curious about what alternatives I might propose. I prepared carefully for the meeting, arranging my dining room table with folders of information for each of them. I made coffee and set out some pastries, determined to keep the atmosphere civil despite the tension. My hand shook slightly as I heard their cars pulling up outside, but I took a deep breath and reminded myself that I was standing on solid ground. My father was the first through the door, his expression stern. My mother followed, looking tired and worried. Jackson came next, subdued compared to his usual demeanor. Vanessa entered last, her face tight, with barely concealed hostility. "Thank you for coming," I said, gesturing to the table. "Please sit down. I have some information I would like to share with all of you." Once everyone was seated, I began with the most important news. "First, I want you to know that I have signed a 2-year lease with new tenants for the rental unit. They are a lovely couple, both medical residents, and they will be moving in next week." I slid a copy of the lease agreement with personal information blacked out to the center of the table. The reaction was immediate. Vanessa's face flushed red. "You did what? How could you do that without discussing it with us first?" "Because it is my property," I said calmly, "and finding good tenants is my responsibility as the owner. You did this deliberately to block us," my father accused. "I did this because I need the rental income to pay my mortgage," I corrected, which brings me to my next point. I distributed the folders I had prepared. Inside you will find financial projections showing exactly what it would cost me to allow you to live in my property rent-free. The first year alone would mean a loss of over $20,000 in rental income, which is income I rely on to help pay my mortgage. "Money is not everything," my mother said quietly. "No, but financial stability is important," I countered. And that brings me to the third section in your folders. I have researched affordable housing options that would work for Jackson and Vanessa's budget. I turned to my brother and his wife. There are 3-bedroom apartments available at Riverdale Commons for $1,500 a month, which is significantly less than you are paying now. They have openings next month. I have included the contact information for the leasing office. Jackson flipped through the papers looking surprised. This is actually helpful. I have also included information about the First-Time Homebuyers Assistance Program, I continued. With your income level and the twins, you might qualify for down payment assistance if you want to look into buying your own place eventually. Vanessa snorted. So your solution is to pawn us off on government programs instead of helping your own family. My solution is to offer practical alternatives instead of enabling financial dependence, I replied evenly. I am happy to help in ways that make sense. I can loan you the security deposit for a new apartment with a written agreement for repayment. I can continue to help Jackson with his resume and job search. I can watch the twins one evening a week, so you can pick up a part-time job, Vanessa. I took a deep breath before continuing. What I cannot and will not do is give up my home or my rental income. That would be financially devastating for me and would not actually solve your underlying issues. My father stood up abruptly. This is not what we came here to discuss. We came to work out when Jackson and Vanessa could move in. That is not going to happen, I said firmly. I have changed the locks, signed a lease with new tenants, and am prepared to take legal action if necessary to protect my property rights. I am sorry if that disappoints you, but my decision is final. After all we have done for you, my mother said, tears welling in her eyes. This is how you repay us. I am grateful for everything you have done for me, I assured her. But that does not mean I owe you my home. Parents raise children to be independent, not to own their adult children's assets. Vanessa stood up, grabbing her purse. I knew this would be a waste of time. Come on, Jackson. We will figure this out without her help. To my surprise, Jackson did not immediately follow his wife. He was still looking through the housing information I had provided. Actually, he said slowly, some of these options look doable. Maybe we should look at that Riverdale place tomorrow. Vanessa stared at him in disbelief. Are you serious? You are taking her side. It is not about sides, Jackson said with a maturity I had not seen from him before. It is about finding a realistic solution. We cannot afford to keep living where we are, and Marilyn has made it clear we cannot move here. So, you are just giving up, my father demanded. Jackson shrugged. Call it accepting reality. Marilyn owns this place, not us. We need to find our own solution. The meeting ended shortly after with my parents and Vanessa leaving in angry silence. Jackson hung back, asking a few more questions about the apartment complex I had recommended. For the first time in years, we had a conversation that felt like equals discussing a problem rather than him expecting me to fix everything. After they all left, I sat in my quiet living room, emotionally drained but relieved. The confrontation had been difficult but necessary. I had protected my boundaries while still offering help that made sense. Whether they would accept that help remained to be seen, but I had done what I could. Most surprisingly, Jackson had shown a glimmer of taking responsibility. Perhaps being told no firmly and consistently was exactly what he needed. 6 months passed, bringing changes I could never have predicted on that tense day when I stood my ground against my family's demands. The journey has not been easy, but it has been transformative for all of us in unexpected ways. The first few weeks after our confrontation were painfully silent. No calls from my parents, no family dinner invitations, not even the usual social media interactions. Vanessa posted vague comments about toxic family members that were clearly aimed at me. The isolation stung, but I focused on my work, my home, and rebuilding my sense of peace. Michael and Jessica, my new tenants, moved in as scheduled and proved to be everything a landlord could hope for. They paid their rent on time, communicated clearly about any issues, and even helped maintain the small shared garden between our units. Having respectful, responsible tenants reinforced that I had made the right decision professionally, even if it had been personally painful. About a month after our confrontation, my mother called. Her voice was subdued, lacking the usual guilt-inducing tone I had grown accustomed to. I have been thinking about everything she said. I still wish you could have helped Jackson and Vanessa more, but I understand why you felt you could not give up your home. It was not quite an apology, but it was a start. We agreed to meet for lunch the following week, just the two of us. That lunch was awkward but civil. We carefully avoided the duplex topic, instead focusing on neutral subjects. By the end, a tentative bridge had been rebuilt. My father took longer to come around. It was nearly 3 months before he would speak to me directly. When he finally did call, it was with grudging respect rather than warmth. "You stood your ground," he said gruffly. "I did not agree with your decision, but you defended your position well. Your grandfather would have approved of your backbone, if not your choice." Coming from my father, this was high praise indeed. Our relationship remained strained, but the open hostility had faded. The most surprising change came from Jackson and Vanessa. Unable to move into my duplex, they were forced to find their own solution. They ended up renting a 3-bedroom apartment at Riverdale Commons, the complex I had recommended. The rent was indeed significantly lower than their previous place, which eased some of their financial pressure. More importantly, the experience seemed to trigger a new sense of responsibility in Jackson. He applied for and got a promotion at the warehouse, moving from the loading dock to a logistics coordinator position with better pay and regular hours. He also took on weekend work doing inventory at a local retailer, using the extra income to pay down their credit card debt. Vanessa, faced with the reality that no one was going to rescue them, finally took a part-time job at the twins' school, working during school hours, so childcare was not an issue. She complained about it constantly on social media, but the additional income made a tangible difference in their finances. I found ways to help that maintained healthy boundaries. Once a week, I had the twins over for dinner and homework, help giving Jackson and Vanessa a break, and building a stronger relationship with my niece and nephew. I taught Jackson how to create and follow a household budget, a skill our parents had never instilled in either of us. When they needed to replace their aging refrigerator, I loaned them the money, with a clear written agreement for monthly repayments, which, to my pleasant surprise, they have honored faithfully. Family dinners eventually resumed, though, with a different dynamic. My parents seemed to have gained a new respect for my boundaries, no longer treating my choices as subject to family approval. Vanessa remained somewhat cold toward me, but the open hostility had subsided to mere coolness. The most meaningful moment came 3 months ago, when Jackson and I met for coffee without our spouses or parents present. "I need to thank you," he said, stirring his coffee thoughtfully, "for not letting us move into your duplex." I nearly choked on my latte. "That is not what I expected to hear." He smiled ruefully. "Yeah, well, I have had time to think about it. If you had given in, we would never have figured out how to solve our own problems. I would still be working the loading dock and complaining about my bad luck. Vanessa would still be waiting for someone else to fix our situation." "You have really stepped up," I acknowledged. "I am proud of you." "It was not easy," he admitted, "but when you made it clear we could not just take over your place, it forced us to find our own solutions. For the first time in my adult life, I feel like I am actually in control of my future, not just waiting for the next bailout." That conversation healed something deep between us. a sibling relationship that had been distorted by years of uneven expectations and resentment. My relationship with my own property changed as well. I no longer feel guilty about owning it or protecting it. This duplex represents not just financial security, but a tangible reminder that I have the right to establish boundaries and protect what I have worked for. Each mortgage payment feels like an affirmation of my independence and self-respect. Last month, I began researching the possibility of purchasing a second investment property. With my career advancing and my financial management skills proven through my first property, this feels like a natural next step. Michael and Jessica have expressed interest in renewing their lease when it expires next year, providing continued stability for my current investment. The experience taught me that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for family is not to give them everything they want, but to respect them enough to let them find their own solutions. Real support is not about enabling dependence, but encouraging growth, even when that growth comes through challenge. It also taught me about my own worth. For years, I had unconsciously accepted my family's narrative that my needs were less important because I was single without children. Standing up for myself meant rejecting that narrative and affirming that my life, my choices, and my property deserved the same respect as anyone else's. Perhaps most importantly, I learned that healthy boundaries are not walls that separate us from loved ones, but clear guidelines that allow relationships to flourish with mutual respect. By saying no to an unreasonable demand, I ultimately helped create healthier dynamics throughout my family. The journey has not been perfect. There are still tense moments at family gatherings, sidelong glances, and occasional passive-aggressive comments. But beneath it all runs a new current of respect that was missing before. My parents see me differently now, as a truly independent adult rather than a daughter to be directed. Jackson is finding his own strength instead of looking for rescuers. Even Vanessa seems to be slowly developing more self-reliance. As for me, I sleep soundly in the home I created, knowing that I honored both my family bonds and my personal boundaries. It turns out that these two values need not be in conflict when built on a foundation of mutual respect. Sometimes, the hardest boundary to set becomes the most important one, and sometimes saying no is the most powerful way to say yes to your own worth. Have you ever had to stand up to family pressure to protect something important to you? Share your story in the comments below, and do not forget to like and subscribe if this resonated with you. Remember, protecting your boundaries is not selfish. It is essential for both your well-being and truly healthy relationships. Thank you for watching, and may you find the courage to stand firm when it matters most.